This is the Melt Cosmetics Gemini palette. And this is 2 looks that I got from the greens. If you want to see how I got there, keep on watching. I'm the Hooded Lid, and welcome to my channel. I thought we'd start with browns and just do the brown areas. So let's do some swatching. Cupcake, Polka Dot, Lorelei. Cupcake seems like a cool brown to the warm brown. And then we have Gemini and I think Luna. These are a little bit powdery, but it doesn't really matter how it swatches. What matters is how it works on the eyes. So let's try some browns. I'm a little afraid, honestly, because these are pretty darn dark. Luna. I have powdered my lids, foundation and powder. It goes on nice. There's no problem. But I did kick off my brush. No problem blending, no problem applying, no fallout. All right, so I'm just going to go, I'm kind of feeling where my eyeball is for starts. And just go in circular motion. And then open the eye to see what is actually being seen. And then pull out whatever's left in an upward motion. There's hardly anything left. This eye's the more difficult eye because the crepiness, the fat pad, just, this is, you know, the challenging eye. So I'm kind of feeling, also it's more puffy, so feeling for that eye socket usually gets me a little higher. So when I open the eyes, the shadow is much higher on this one. And it is. It was something a little bigger, a little more dense to just kind of blend that so it's not so high and obvious looking. And just raise it on this one a little bit. And go back with the blender. You know, so when I think of when I'm doing browns and neutrals, which I don't do very often, that the idea is to really play the shadows and light, that you're just looking to create a socket where there isn't one and bring an outline or a focus to the eyes, but it's not bringing out your color, it's not doing anything like that. It's almost like a black and white photo or like a sepia tone or desaturated photo. So it's just shadows and light. And maybe that's what I'm going to do for the whole face. Just keep it really low key and monochromatic. Luna, the lightest shade on the lid. And work that up to the darker colors so there's a nice gradation. It's certainly a nice color for a liner. Okay, I cleaned up every day, never fails. I feel like I have a hair on my face. Anyway, I powdered under my eyes and I cleaned up that fallout. Little tight lining now. All right, I think this is a perfectly nice look. Just a little bit of mascara, can call it a day, or put a little bit of color underneath the eyes, just a smudge. Let's do that. Brush. And it's just a haze of color. All right, part 1. Now I'm going to go on with mascara and we'll see what kind of difference that makes, and then we'll go ahead and put the shimmer on. All right, so this is the neutral portion of the palette. No metallics, just an everyday really nice look. Just gives you a little bit of outline, not too deep. This is, of course, a hooded lid interpretation of how to use this. If I had a normal lid, I would go in a little heavier with the darker color of the socket, and I would darken the outer V to give dimension to the eyeball and make it look more rounded. But that's not the eyes I have. I think I will pull out just the teeniest bit. So I'm going to go back in with polka dot. And just a teeny bit. Bring it out. There you go. Now, Gemini. Right on the inside. Huh. Honestly, I think this is not so incredibly reflective that you couldn't carry this off during the day and maybe even bring it to work. But if you are a person who likes something really reflective and metallic, I'm not sure you're going to love this one. Let me swatch it again. So it's right there. Well, actually, okay. In the light, it is looking nice, just with the brush, not so much. So maybe with your fingers, or if you get the brush wet, you'll get a little bit more out of it. Let's see. I guess a little bit better with the finger. As always, I'm just going to do a final blend all over the place. There are no creams in here, so you'd have to go somewhere else if you wanted to do something on the brow bone, or if you wanted something to blend out with. But I do like the way I've managed to do this socket line. When the eye's like this, it looks good and it's blended out well. I don't have that nakedness I usually have right in this area. I am wearing the lighter color right there, but I think that lighter color, it's so close to my skin tone it's hard to tell, but I think it stayed. So there, it's perfectly nice. Now if I do not sound excited about this palette, it's just for a couple of reasons. One, I just bought this one, you know, and this isn't incredibly different. It's just a little more mustardy, and it's not a look that I normally go for. I don't think it does anything to make my eyes sparkle. It doesn't bring out the color in my hazel, and it's perfectly fine. I did a nudish lip and nudish blush, and there's nothing wrong with it. They blended very nicely. And the only thing is, this, if you're into metallics, I think this, you need to get wet. I'm fine with it being a little more muted because of my hoodedness. Just to put metallics all over my lid means they're going to end up right up here, and that's a no. So let's do greens. Here's the color story we have with the greens. This is Moji, or this is Fire OG. This is Goals, and this is Leo. They're very, very pretty on the hand. I would love a dress like this. However, trying to find a look on the eye has proven to be a little more difficult for me. I've tried it a couple of times without a whole lot of success. These two darker greens really are too similar for me to really justify why they're both in there, but we're going to go for it anyway. This is probably my 4th try, and it will be my final. Warning, these are very powdery. I find what you need to do is knock off, and if you knock off too much pigmentation, go in again. So go in, knock off, and go in again, knock off. I don't know if you can see, this is how much I just knocked off. I'm calling it mochi. I'm going to put this on the lid. This color I find is, well, it's really the only color you can use when you're doing a transition blending. I'm going to try it on the lid. And it's kind of a mustard chartreuse. Leo, I find this to be a little more vibrant than Fire OG. Fire OG seems to have some brown in it. And I'm going to see if I can deepen up the crease with this. I'm using a very, very, very light hand. And the outer edge. Actually, I am wearing a primer. And it's kind of moving around, like I didn't put it right there. And I had that problem the other night, actually with Muchi, where I lifted it up to do transition, and the powder just fell down. It's tricky. Fire OG. And now just do a little blending. I think this is a pretty good day look. If you wanted to, you could blend a little bit heavier out here. This brush is obviously bigger and more dense. I'm still using a light hand, but I'm really diffusing this so it could be a daytime look. Now, if you already have the Natasha Denona Gold Mini Palette, you probably don't need this because I feel I can get pretty much the same look on that one. And I did get fallout. The one good thing I can say about this palette so far is these work well as liners, which I usually can't do with the powder because they just transfer up. And these don't, which is so strange because they drop and they move and they migrate, but when it comes to transferring up, I think something just fell on my cheek. They don't. I'm using the darker color. I don't want to do the black. I think that would be too harsh for me. There. It's very pretty. Now, let's try some of the shimmer. The green shimmer is really, really pretty, but I'm going to use the shimmer on the other side. And I have found that these are not incredibly shiny. They're metallics, but they don't really read that metallic. But let's see, maybe with the contrast, doing it with the green instead of, I did it with the browns the other day, it might look a little different. Not really. It's the strangest thing. I'm going to pull you in. Back out. Oops, I'm going to clean off my hands a little bit. These are very messy, and I don't know if I can show you what this looks like. That's a lot of powder, and I don't like that because it'll end up all over me. You know, I recently did the Too Faced Extra Spicy Gingerbread, which blended so much easier than this one and wasn't as messy. I still see it's not a perfect blend. And even as I did that, I got some more fallout. So these are very, I think, very tricky to work with. Let's try a darker look for evening on this side. The Trouble Dye. I'm going to do Leo on the lid. Okay, that took a little work. It took more work than it should have, I think. Fire OG. And then this empty area, I'm going to do a different brush, same color. Okay, I don't know if you can see what I mean. There's just not enough difference in these two colors to justify both of them being there, in my opinion. So maybe they designed them to be used in different ways. I can't say, but this is what we got. Back with Mochi, I'm going to blend out with this one. I cleaned the brush, and this is eyes getting a little higher than I wanted, but this is an evening, more of an evening look. Boom, boom. They're both perfectly good looks, but I find these a little bit muddy. I wish there was a little more brightness to them. They're more like, instead of being mossy, they're more like sludgy, if that makes sense. A little more grungy. I would prefer a little more vibrancy, just a little. I kind of feel this isn't giving me anything all that special. The brown look was very nice. There was nothing wrong with it, and it was a different kind of brown. It was a brown with a lot of mustard in it, a lot of yellow tones. It didn't knock my socks off. And for me, to buy a palette where only half of it is useful, that's a no-go for me. I'm going to do a little bit of this shimmer, which is really pretty, but these shimmers are not incredibly, the gold one isn't incredibly bright. This one is far more bright, and I'm not packing it on. I'm kind of sweeping it through because I think that's prettier. I'm going to zoom you in. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like if you pack it on. If you're not hooded and you are not concerned about metallics just transferring up to your hood, this is very pretty. It's really pretty. I know for me, it's going to be there in 5 minutes. And now I'm just going to show you what it looks like on the inner corner. And for that, I'm using a brush, and it's really not picking up much on the brush. But it's there. It's hard to tell when the brush is dark. Eyes closed, eyes open. So I feel that I've already kind of given you my conclusions, but I'll just check them off. The colors aren't exciting to me. I like the browns fine. The greens, I wish they had a little bit more vibrancy, a little less muddiness. I wish the two darker greens, there was more of a difference between them. The black is really beautiful and it lines very well. I just didn't do that today. The metallics are not super high reflection, but mind you, I'm comparing to like a Natasha Denona, which is boom, there. This is not that. This is just average. The application onto the brush is tricky. These are very, very powdery. You must knock them off. Even if you knock them off, the probability of fallout is incredibly high. You have to be very careful with your application for loading the brush and applying to the eye. You have to expect you are probably going to get some fallout. And one final thing, I did wear these the other night and I found that they kind of disappeared. Evenly, it didn't become patchy, but I remember looking in the mirror around 9 o'clock at night and it was gone. And it kind of makes sense because they're so powdery. And that's about it. I hope this was helpful to you when you're thinking about how you're going to spend your money and what you want to do for the sale maybe. And I hope you come back again. In the meantime, I'm wishing you a great day.